Hey guys, Sonya and Al here from Kapow with a roundup of some of the #1s we've been reading lately. Archie #1 is written by Mark Waid with art by Fiona Staples and is the first Archie issue 1 to be released in 75 years, featuring all of the old characters and the familiar high school drama updated for the modern world. The story begins with Archie and Betty, the original childhood sweethearts, having just broken up, an event that has left all of Riverdale High School in an uproar. So, does this reboot keep the charm of the original? Does it go far enough? Or is it just the same old thing, but with hashtags? Sonya, what did you think?
Well, look, I've never been a big reader of Archie. I've always found it a little bit twee, a little bit dated.
Always been kind of stuck in the 50s?
Yeah, I've liked some of the crossovers and some of the darker Archies.
Sure, and the Sabrina.
The Sabrina was great,
well.
yeah, but I've never been a big Archie, so I was kind of tentative going into this. I'm really glad that I read it though. I'm going to give this one a buy. I have loved what Waid has done with this. He's really tapped into that teenage voice that Archie really needs to have, that really youthful, hopeful kind of voice, even though at the beginning of this it's all a bit
yeah, he's not in a good place emotionally.
No,
yeah.
Archie and Betty, come on now.
Oh, it's catastrophic.
It is.
But I know what you're saying in terms of finding that teenage voice.
Yep.
It really did manage that, and that's a tricky thing to nail without coming across as just trying to pander to a demographic.
Exactly. But I think Waid did it really, really well. I'm also really fascinated by the character of Jughead.
Right, yeah.
Never thought I'd say that sentence.
No.
I've always
fairly one-dimensional.
Yeah, I've always seen him as one-dimensional, just a bit of a goof, and that's about it. Whereas in this one, he's got a bit of side to him. He's a really interesting kind of character. He still plays up that goofball, you know, you don't want to know what I'm going to do, kind of, you're not going to understand it, give me all your food. But there's also something a bit, I don't know, well, there's something going on with Jughead.
He's more like one of those laconic characters that you get in Joss Whedon shows, like Oz, you know, who's very sort of withheld. There's something going on in the background, but he's very flippant up front.
Exactly. And of course, we cannot talk about this without talking about Fiona Staples' beautiful artwork.
Certainly wouldn't want to.
No, I've been a big fan of Fiona since I saw her work in Saga, obviously. Stunning. So it was really cool for me to see her do, I mean, obviously Saga is a sci-fi, it's crazy and it's wonderful and you can do wonderful wacky things.
Yeah.
Riverdale High, not so much.
It's teenagers
doing things,
around.
But she created such a beautiful world that is rich and different, and the thing that I love the most was there's a couple of panels in here where there isn't a lot of dialogue, there's not a lot going on, or Archie's doing a direct address to the reader. And what's happening in the background is telling so much of the story. There's a beautiful panel, which is possibly my favourite panel. Archie's talking to us about the breakup and you see Betty in the background. And she's trying to make that decision to go up and talk to him, but
she gets up there.
She can't. And it's just so beautifully done.
It was really intelligently done, wasn't
it? I gotta say, I might be an Archie reader now. I really did enjoy this one.
Okay. Yeah. Well, look, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I have never been an Archie reader. I've checked out some of those recent ones. The Afterworld Archie, even Archie versus Predator. That was a weird one. And I didn't really get on board with that, so I didn't know what to expect from this. But Mark Waid has a good history of being able to lay his hands on existing properties and doing good things with it. It's a buy from me as well.
Cool.
I'm not saying it's going to be one that's going to make me keep reading this title.
Sure.
But I certainly read it through a couple of times and found it really entertaining and really endearing. You've got, as you say, you've got these great characters. It's bringing more diversity into it. Not to put too fine a point on it, but it did have that 50s oeuvre that it kept with for so long. So it always felt kind of stuck. Even though it did update some things, you have a gay character, you have all these sort of things coming in, it always did feel a bit stuck.
Yeah, sure.
So that update has really worked for this. We've got mobile phones, we've got
hashtags,
hashtags that are mentioned in there, which was, they are doing the direct-to-camera, they are doing the, breaking the fourth wall a bit, but it worked. It was done in an endearing way, in a charming way. I agree, Staples does some fantastic artwork here.
So good.
There's a real visual language that she's playing with.
Exactly right,
There's a section early on where Archie's gone to the movies by himself, people are coming out, and they've just got little speech bubbles with stars, and
Yeah.
you know what they're saying. You know, this guy's going, I really loved it. This person's saying, I didn't much care for it. And there's Archie just talking to his popcorn. So
He's just thirsty.
it's, you know, that economy of language was done
exactly.
really well. Again, later on when Archie's playing the guitar,
Yep.
you see the notes and you can see that they start a bit fractured, but then it becomes smoother and more
He builds his
triumphant as he goes
confidence
along.
and he gets going.
And that's what's done really well in both the writing and the artwork for this one. They are conveying the story in a simple way. They're not
Yep.
overwriting it. They're not overtelling it, and it comes across really well. So yeah, it's definitely a success.
Moving on, The Tomorrows is a new series from Dark Horse, written by Kurt Pyers, with art in the first issue by Jason Copeland, and with a new artist planned for every issue. In a grim dystopian future, the corporations have taken over. Personal privacy doesn't exist, and creating any kind of art is illegal. The only people willing to make a stand for self-expression are an eclectic group of dissidents and a supercomputer with the personality of Andy Warhol. Our lead character Zoe is an artist who's on the run from the authorities and in way over her head. Now, there are a lot of big ideas and philosophical references in this first issue, but does it actually help The Tomorrows or does it hinder the story, Al?
Well, look, I've got to say up front, this one didn't really work for me. I am going to give it a berry. I was frustrated by how it played out.
Yep.
I mean, we've seen this sort of story before, certainly, and that's not a reason to not do it anymore.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be taking it in this kind of, you know, high art, expressionistic, postmodern sort of thing, then you got to bring it into the story.
Yeah,
There's
sure.
a lot of stuff, as you say, there's references. And this is where it really falls down for me. There are references without it being incorporated into the story.
Sure.
It's very demonstrative
Yep.
in terms, but without really following through. There's stuff like an attempt to be self-aware. There's a section where somebody's explaining stuff and then says, oh, this is getting a bit information dumpy, but then keeps
they keep
doing
doing
it.
it,
So
yeah.
that's not self-aware. That's trying to break the fourth wall a little bit and then just going straight back to what you were doing.
Sure.
There are a lot of guys who have done this sort of story. You've got your Hickmans, you've got your
right.
Grant Morrison,
Yep.
you've got Warren Ellis. There's a lot of people doing this kind of thing and doing it better. And there was a lot of things that I felt was a bit tacked on.
Yeah,
You
sure.
can't make things future-y by just putting hyper at the start.
No.
There's a hyper bike, there's a hyper phone. Unless that's the brand, you just
It
not,
just
it's
kind of
not
goes a
working.
bit odd, and you're like, why is it hyper? That's what I got focused on. I'm like,
Yeah.
but why is it hyper?
What makes it hyper? Is
Does it just have ADD? What
it's
is
on
it?
too much sugar.
Yes.
But maybe that is a problem with this. Maybe it's on too much sugar. I think the artwork wasn't bad.
Yeah.
I was okay with Copland's artwork.
Yep.
So that kind of worked. Whether, you know, you're bringing in new artists every issue, whether that's going to expand on what this is, maybe. I don't know. But we've seen that done to great effect with Alish Cott's Zero.
That's right.
That's really shown how that can work.
Yep.
I don't think that's going to rescue this.
Sure.
I don't think the characterization is there.
Yep.
You've got a lot of characters who are, for all intents and purposes, interchangeable.
Yeah.
You've got characters who are clearly trying to be demonstrated as being a certain type of character. Your big bad, the head of this corporation, or at least, you know, this division of the corporation.
Yeah.
He, you know, says a bunch of weird stuff, you know, like he'll throw out things like, yes, I have, you know, a chronic masturbatory issue. And you're like, what? Where's that coming from? That's not in any way related to what's happening in the story
sure.
here. And you're just trying to demonstrate, oh, look, I'm weird. And I think, I think this is overreaching.
Yeah.
That was the real problem for me.
Yeah, look, I got to agree with you. For me, it's a berry from me as well. I love my highfalutin sci-fi stories, but as you said, you know, Hickman, Morrison, there's better stories out there.
Yeah.
I did like the artwork in this first issue. I thought that the architecture of this world was really interesting, and the way that you've kind of got bunkers and you've got the high-rises, and the color palette throughout was very cool. The flashes of neon combined with that really dark, grey, monotonous kind of that blended together to make a really interesting world, Blade Runner-ish.
Yeah, but did they really
But
display
not
the
quite
world
enough.
that well?
And that's the problem. Even with this, the world still feels a little two-dimensional. It still hasn't really captured my imagination of the city.
Well, there's 90% of what you're seeing is actually either you know, in the corporate headquarters
Yeah.
or in their little bunker that they have.
Exactly.
So you're not actually seeing this dystopian world. We don't know if it's even that
We're not
dystopian.
quite sure. No, it might
we
actually be
see-
quite nice.
Yeah, we see some people in Times Square near the end. And then they're just celebrating. So it doesn't seem like things are that bad.
No.
So-
And that's the problem I found overall with this comic. It goes to about here, and it just needs to go to about here.
Yeah.
It's not pushing these ideas far enough to actually make them intriguing, to make me want to read the next issue.
Yeah.
Even with, I mean, a lot happens in this issue. This is certainly not a number one where you go, yeah, but nothing happened.
Yeah.
Lots happen. Too much happens in this issue.
Yeah.
Where you just
there was
dragged
a whole
along.
adventure that could have been 3 issues.
3 issues. You're
Yeah.
dragged along, and all of a sudden you're at the end, and it's like, wait, what? And I mean, I've read this a couple of times now, and I still kind of got to the end and just went, eh. And that's really not what you want when you get to the end of a number one.
That's not going to drag you on.
It's not going
for
to drag you
series.
on to the next one. I might pick it up in the shop when I buy my other comics just to have a look at the next artist, but that's probably as far as it goes. So yeah, unfortunately for me, it's another berry as well.
Oh, it's a shame. And finally, we have 1872. The Marvel Secret Wars event and the fractured battle world created as a result of it has provided a great opportunity for creators to reimagine some of our favourite characters in new situations. So why not a Western? 1872 is a new monthly title written by Jerry Duggan, with art by Nick Varela and colours by Lee Lockridge. If you've seen a Western, any Western before, then the setup will be familiar. A dangerous frontier town where everyone has a secret, a lone sheriff standing firm against a wealthy landowner and his thugs as they try to lynch an innocent man. But when the sheriff's name is Steve Rogers, things might turn out a bit differently than we expect. Sonya, what did you think?
I love me a Western. I went through a massive phase of watching every Western I could get my hands on when I was probably about 13. And that love has stuck with me. So this is a big old buy from me.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed reading this. I've read it probably about 5 or 6 times now, which is a lot for me for an issue number 1. But I really, really enjoyed it. It's fun. It does tap into that quintessential Western setup.
Yeah.
There's a big bad guy. There is your sheriff who is just fighting to hold on to, you know, law and order in this frontier town. You've got your town drunk, which in this case is Stark.
Yeah.
Of course it's Stark.
Of course it's Tony.
It's fantastic.
I loved seeing him being an alcoholic again. Yeah.
That sounds really bad,
I
but
know,
so did
but
I actually.
You love seeing that flaw in his character just when he's really scraping the bottom.
No, totally. And that's the thing. All of the characters that pop up in this first issue, you know these characters. You love these characters. So it's really fun to see them in this Western kind of genre.
Yeah.
Varela and Lockridge have created such a beautiful world with this as well. You can practically taste the dust.
Yeah, well, it is a bit monochromatic.
It is, but look at a Western film.
There's a lot of dust.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of dust. There's horses and there's plaid. That's it. That's a Western. And they've got all of those.
Yeah.
I just found that the pace in this was great. The art is fantastic. It's a rollicking good adventure. You know it's going to get crazy. There's going to be gunfights at the OK Corral. I'm
Sure.
absolutely certain of it.
Yeah.
And I just really love seeing this kind of thing. It's nice to see Marvel go into a bit of a Western. I haven't really seen that for a while.
Yeah.
And there's a map at the beginning of this which has the names of all the people who are obviously going to be players.
Yeah, there's the Parker Ranch.
So it's so
there's-
cool.
yeah.
You look at it and go, oh, why didn't they bring that into the first issue? But that's what's going to make me keep reading. I want to see who these people are in this world. It's very, very cool. It's very exciting, and I loved it. Can you tell? Because, you know.
Yeah, quite effusive. Yeah, okay.
Love a Western.
No,
Love it.
and I think you're on point. It's definitely, look, it's a buy from me as well. You can really tell that Duggan is a huge Western fan because it is so much, all the tropes
Yeah,
that
all
you
there.
recognise, they're all there.
Yeah.
And when you've got, you know, your wealthy industrialist as Wilson Fisk, you know,
Perfect.
you've got Doc Banner, you know, and his apothecary shop, you know, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it's going to work in terms of, is anyone going to have any powers?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, because we've started off with Steve Rogers,
Yeah.
who's basically, you know, he's quick, he's fast, he's strong, and
Fair
those can
enough.
always be human,
Yeah.
you know, attributes.
Yeah.
But is Bruce Banner and is going to be cooking something up in his apothecary shop that, you know, turns him into a monster? Or are they going to find another way to do that?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
we saw with Marvel Noir, you know, they sort of did, let's see, a real-world version of those powers. You know,
And that was
Wolverine
really
carries
cool.
some claws around,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yep.
So I'll be interested to see if that's where they go, where these powers are just going to be transposed into being a really good shot or whatever that is.
Exactly.
Yeah, I felt the same. I wanted to see more of these characters and how they're
so
being
much, yeah.
interpreted, but yeah, that map at the start is a great teaser. It just makes you want to stick with it and see what these characters are all going to be like through this lens of the Western.
Yep.
But yeah, look, if you love your Gary Coopers, your Yul Brenners, it's got that feel.
Yep.
You know, John Wayne could walk around the corner. I don't know
It's
who
a
he would
fistful
be.
of Marvel.
I don't know who he would
Brilliant.
be in terms of Marvel, but you know, that's the sort of feel that it's going for, and I think it's really seized on this opportunity Secret Wars has created to give you something fresh by going back to a really old school trope. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So that's just a few of the number ones we've been reading lately. Please remember to comment and let us know what you've been reading and what you thought of these titles.